that understands this disclaimer. So I'll give the basic disclaimer that this is not an official meeting. No decisions are being made by our board. This is not an official public meeting where you have to take public comment or not doing any action items. This is simply a community input meeting for us to give you information and you to give us your feedback. So, that being said, we have a basic agenda. We may stray from this agenda based on where the conversation goes and what your questions are and what feedback you have. So that's the first thing. There's also my business card. I promise I'm very nice. If you email me or you call me, I will get back to you as soon as I can and I will answer all your questions. Just please don't yell at me. That's my one caveat. I've been called some very not nice names in this process. But even if you don't agree with me, if you want to call me and ask me questions or give me feedback, I'd love to hear it. There is a postcard. If you have been to our library, you will know most of this stuff. If you are not a frequent user of our library, on the back, there is a basic list of services. Now this is not even, it's the tip of the iceberg on what we do for the community. But this will kind of give you a brief idea of some of the things we offer the community, and these are some of our most used services. Also how people get a library card, and it has our information. You can keep this. If you don't want it, you can give it back to me. We take it to events and give them out. Oppositely, if you want to take a stack to hand out to people, then you can take a stack as well. The other thing on here is a basic history of the bond. Probably 90% of your questions will be answered by this bullet point list of the process of the bond, how we made the decisions we made or why we made those decisions and where we're at now. So if you want to kind of browse that while I'm talking, and if you already have been, great. But that will answer a lot of your questions so that we can just get to the nitty-gritty instead of talking about a lot of the surface stuff. For the purpose of the people who can't be here, this video will go on our YouTube and will go on Facebook tomorrow and our YouTube channel tomorrow. We will also post this basic brief history of the bond, and we will also post the paper I'm going to hand out that has the new locations we're thinking about on it so that everyone will be able to see those and they can give their input back to us. Obviously, the people in this room, while I greatly appreciate you being here and your opinion is very, very important to us because you are here and attending and participating, you represent a very, very, very small portion of our service area, and so we are trying to get that information out and get feedback from as many people as we can. That being said, any questions so far? It's kind of housekeeping stuff. My name is Holly Jackson. I am the director of the library. I have been at this library for over 10 years now. I started working as a volunteer when I was in high school, and then I just kind of, I was working my way through school at ISU, and then I decided I loved this career more, and I made a career shift, and I stayed here. So I know this library well. I was born and raised in Chubbuck, about 6 blocks from here, my entire life. So I know the community well. I know a lot of people here. And I love this library and I love this community. So everything we are doing, everything you will hear me say tonight, comes from that place of wanting to serve this community really well, wanting to better this library. You may not agree with me, that's fine. You don't have to agree with me. I ask that everyone in this room be respectful, and that you just hear us out so you at least have the correct information. On this brief history of the bond, you will see on the back page, there's a misinformation section. Those are rumors that got spread around. You can read that. We might address some of them. But what happened the last time is the day after the bond election failed, I got a lot of people calling and asking me questions or yelling at me about different things, like someone was under the impression that the bond would be passing to fund the city of Chubbuck. That's wholly incorrect. We are not in any way connected to the city of Chubbuck except for that we are an entity within city boundaries. There was someone thought we were building a restaurant and we were not increasing our book space. So we had some rumors going around. The reason we want you to listen, the reason we ask that is so that we make sure that you're getting correct information. If you still don't support it, that's completely fine. But we want to make sure you have the correct information to base your decisions off of. Any questions so far? Alrighty. So as you look at that brief history of the bond, I'm going to walk back and forth. That'll give you a chance to see all the pictures. We don't have a lot of space, so I do apologize for being cramped. But these are from our first round with the bond. These are not, these are basic floor plans. These are concepts. None of these are, this is for sure 100% what the library is going to look like. So go into it knowing that. We thought, oh, this looks nice. Hey, this is an idea. The floor plan is something we worked and reworked and reworked and reworked. We know that this is about the space we would need to serve the growing community, if not a little bit more, but this is at least what we need. So we worked out a floor plan that would work based on our experience here, based on some feasibility studies, asking the community's feedback, things like that. Yes, ma'am.
Have you consulted with the ALA about library design and any of that kind of thing?
Yes,
Looked
and we
into that?
attended a
Okay.
library conference on design. Library Journal every
Okay.
year hosts a design conference where they call in architects to work specifically with libraries on their design challenges. We've also attended that.
Okay.
I also read an entire book on designing libraries, and we have been working with an architect. So we've gotten multiple opinions, multiple facets here. Those architects are Myers Anderson. They have worked with other libraries and city facilities, so they have experience in the civic arena. So this has been very well thought out. We have looked at other libraries. We've discussed our plans with other libraries that are successful, that have a good following, that serve their community well, and we have gone and we've asked them, what do you think, what works best for you, why would you do this, why wouldn't you do this? So this is a lot of thought has gone into this. That being said, this still isn't 1,000%. Do you want to come sit up here, please? You can come sit up. No, Margaret, come sit up here, Margaret. What's her daughter's name? I'm not so far off, guys. So this is not 100% set in stone. This could definitely change if we get a different plot of land, if we start looking at it and everyone from the community comes back and says, hey, we don't need more bathrooms. We don't need a computer space that's quiet. We don't need any of these things. That's something we'll consider. So these are first rendition. You can come up, you can look at these afterwards, you can see them from here. This does have our original planned location on it. This is how it would sit on our original planned location. Tonight, this handout I will give everyone. It shows you how the library, how this design would sit on the different plots of land, as well as where the green space would be located. So currently we use the green space over at Stewart Park, or if the city has something going on, the LDS Stake Center across the street is often lets us use theirs. And so we use one of those two green spaces because we don't have enough room out here for when we do our big programs. We're looking at 500-600 people, and so that doesn't really cut it. But we are planning for the new library green space, so you'll see that on there as well. This basic history talks about when we started discussing a new library and why. You'll see that back as far as 2014, we started looking at it and saying, ooh, we're running out of space, and how are we gonna work through the next decade? And kind of doing some thinking about what we would need to serve the community, doing some observing. And then in 2016, that went to our board, and our board got involved and started working at it. We first looked at an expansion on this building, where right out here on the south side, we would build a 2-story expansion. It was not feasible, so that was not gonna work. We looked at building on this same plot of land, and that was also not cost feasible. It also, the operations cost in the long run for a 2-story building cost the taxpayers more, so we wanted to stay away from that. And eventually we came to the conclusion that we really needed to look at other plots of land and just building a new building that could be 1 story, so we could keep our closeness and effectiveness that we have now in serving the public, and also keep those overall costs down. Why did we choose the location we did? So this is a big one for tonight since we're discussing new locations. First of all, there was not a whole ton available when we looked. That's just bare bones of it. There's more available now, or we have had more connections now, more people reaching out to us than we did last time. Everyone asks about Knutson. Knutson would cost us over $1 million just to get 2 acres of land. It's like 1.2 or $1.4 million just to get 2 acres of land. Not feasible for the library. We were getting 2 acres for $685,000, and that was below market value, below appraised value. So we started looking, and on the corner we had some requirements we were looking at. We wanted to be visible and accessible, right, for the public, so people could find us, so people could know where they are, especially with all the new growth coming in, all of the new people moving in. People who know this area well, you say, oh, the library's over by Stewart Park, and they know where that is. It's easy to find us. If people don't know where that is, it's not like we can say, oh, you turn off Yellowstone or you turn off Chubbuck. We have to give a circuitous directions to get here. So we were trying to find visibility for all of those new people coming in. We also wanted somewhere that was easily accessible for our entire population. Now, our service population is not just Chubbuck. It's not just these neighborhoods around us. Our service population is the entirety of North Bannock County, or School District 25, outside of the city limits of Pocatello. So we serve Mink Creek, we serve up Buckskin and Parks, we serve out in Fort Hall area, we serve the entirety of that. So a lot of people didn't understand that we were looking at a service area outside of just these walkable neighborhoods that surround us, and that was one of our considerations. We wanted to be easily accessible for all of our patrons. That being said, as a side note, if you are from the Mink Creek area, or Buckskin or Parks, or out in Fort Hall, or you're watching from that area, we are working on some solutions to get a mobile library going out there so that we can make sure we're hitting all of our service area, which is hard to do no matter where we're located on this side of the county, okay? We also had talked with the city of Chubbuck, and at that point they were discussing their downtown renovation, their downtown, walkable downtown with the new city hall and things like that. And so this was one of the locations they were looking at, and they had shown us that they had plans for creating a walkable downtown. And we also looked at that and thought, that would be really good to be attached to. It would be really good to be down there where they're going to have it accessible and walkable and people friendly. We'll have a green space there, we'll have civic buildings around us, so we'll have good neighbors, we'll know who our neighbors are. So that was another consideration. Like I said in the beginning, nothing is set in stone. When the bond failed, the number one complaint that came back, besides there are and always will be people who are against the taxes, I understand that. I have no other way to do a library building. As a district library, we have to do a bond unless we have a very generous donor who wants to donate land and funds for a building to the library. I will name it after you, if that's the case. My board will name it after you. But we have no other way to fund this. This isn't something that, even if we had $11 million in savings, which we don't, we're a nonprofit, we run off taxes, we don't have that much in savings. We still could not use that money to build a new building on a new plot of land unless we passed a bond. We have to do this. So, besides those people who are absolutely against that, which I understand your opinion, I can't change that. The number two complaint was that they hated the location, which is fine. So we got that feedback. People were telling us why they hated the location. They wanted it more accessible and walkable for kids without crossing main roads. They wanted it to be so that their kid couldn't run out and run into a busy street. All understandable things. They didn't like that it was close to the train tracks. That was a big thing. Someone came in and said, I don't care, I don't have kids, I don't care how accessible it is for kids, but when the train comes through, I don't want to be stuck trying to turn left into the library parking lot. That makes sense. That was something that we had not considered, where the train runs through twice a day, what's going to happen? So then we took that to our board and we said, okay, here's the complaint, what are we going to do? And we called our realtor back and we said, we need to find different locations. And we had some ideas that people had given us. We looked at everything. We looked at Shopco, not happening. It cost us like $33,000 a month to lease half of it. But we looked at everything we could find. We have been calling on developers, people who have big pastures. My realtor has gotten in touch with them and said, hey, would you be willing to sell your pasture? Would you be willing to sell half your backyard and you to sell half your backyard, and we could make enough plot of land for the library? So we've looked at a lot of things. We have come back with 2 locations in addition to our first proposed one that meet some more of the criteria that the community was discussing. So when I give you this, you'll be able to see, but I'm going to talk you through it really quickly first. Site number 1 is our original PIPS location on Chubbuck and Burley Drive. That is still under contract through the November election, contingent upon passing a bond. So if everyone miraculously says we want that one's still secured for us through the November election if we choose to go to November election. The second location is further down on Chubbuck Road. Who knows where Wilkes Funeral Home and the Works Sandwich Shop are? Okay, so there's a huge pasture behind the Works Sandwich Shop. That's location number 2. Location number 3 is right over in this neighborhood. If you go down Stewart to the Garden Streets, there's Rose and Carnation and Tulip in that area. Just right past Stewart Park, that first right, there's a dead-end street named Tulip. And that dead ends to 10 acres of land that fronts on Yellowstone. Currently on Yellowstone, I believe it's the mobile home park sale business, okay? There's that landowner owns that entire 10 acres and is willing to sell us the back 2.5 acres. Of course, they would put a road in so it would be accessible. So the library would dead end that road from Yellowstone, and then of course we would have walkable access from the neighborhood behind us. So we would still be accessible to these surrounding areas by walking and not going on busy streets. So those are the three we're looking at. This is 2 pages. The front page shows you those 3 locations I just talked about. The second page also shows you those 3 locations, but it shows you on a bigger scale, and it has a little circle around each location showing you a 1/4 mile around. So you could see, you can look at one too if you want. You wanna see that?
He's got my glasses.
That's fair. So that second page shows you on a grander scale, you can see I-15, you can see I-86, you can see Chubbuck and Hawthorne, and it shows you the 1/4 mile walkability from where our current location is and how that overlaps with the other locations. So you can see all of that. On this first page, if you look on the right-hand side of the first page, it has some stats for you. On the current site, our parking space is 36,443 square feet. In the new one that we were looking at, our parking space would have been just over 43,000 square feet, which was still gonna be just the teeniest bit tight. In site 2, we're looking at 26,000 square feet, so that parking goes down drastically, but it meets the other criteria, so that's something we can look at being flexible on. And then on site 3, our parking is 41,495 square feet. Still just a couple parking spaces less, but we are more accessible to the neighborhood. We're accessible from a main road. We're more walkable friendly, things like that. It also tells you our green space. So when it says our current site for green space, Stewart Park is 39,371 square feet if we use the entire park, which when we do events like our accessible Easter egg hunt, our water party, things like that, we do use the entire park. And then it shows you site 1, our green space was only going to be about 13,000 square feet, still much better than what we have now, so we were happy. On site 2, the green space is about 24,800 and then 23,600 for site 3. So I'm gonna give you just a minute to look over that. And while you are looking at that, I'm gonna tell you about the survey we're gonna do at the end.
I have
Yes.
a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you, and I know you have the limitations, I understand all of that in terms of the land, but when you were talking about the first site, you're talking about making it accessible to all the new people coming in. What I'm hearing is more accessibility for people, if you know, we're building houses and then, you know, back over in that area in Chubbuck, we live off of Whitaker over in that area, so you know how that's
Yeah.
been building up the past 20 years. Versus accessibility to kids who may not necessarily have parents in their homes who are readers, as much access to books and things of that nature. And I think that should be the #1 priority, is accessibility to people who aren't like me, you know, who have a bad Amazon habit. And those kinds of things, you know, you don't ever see me in the library, but I just retired from Highland, and I gave away, you know, hundreds and hundreds of books from my classroom library so that my husband would not leave. So, you know.
I have an entire room for my books in my basement.
Oh, I have several.
Yes, we agree. So I'll point out 2 things. First thing, we already have children who live up east of Chubbuck Road
Mhm.
who ride their bikes here
Yeah.
because they're still our service area. And so there are children already every day. We have our regulars that are crossing Highline, Chubbuck, Yellowstone to get to the library. So
You're gonna have that wherever.
yeah, so you're gonna have that wherever. That's the first thing we always point out, because a lot of, I mean absolutely no offense by this, because I understand it. A lot of people get very up in arms about the fact that we're trying to leave this neighborhood. When we have to look at the 30,000 foot view, and I have to say, I have kids, I can tell you their names that are already crossing Chubbuck and Yellowstone, or Highland and Yellowstone, or all of these streets every day to come to the library, who don't have parents who are readers in their home, who don't have parents who send them to the library. And so that's gonna be a problem wherever we go. That being said, we like being in this neighborhood, we love it. And we do get a lot of kids who ride from this neighborhood by Bicentennial Park, over in the Canal and Joy streets, down Chubbuck Road from the Whitaker area, over by the mall. And so staying in this area on Chubbuck Road or over off of Stewart on Tulip, between Tulip and Yellowstone, that still gets us a little closer to Central to a lot of those people that are coming, but it keeps us easily accessible for the kids who are riding their bikes and who are walking. Because we agree with you, we want to make sure that we're being family friendly. I don't want my 3-year-old running out in front of a car on a busy street more than anyone else does, and so I understand that consideration completely. Any other comments on that? So really quickly, let me just tell you about the survey we're gonna take, because we're gonna have a discussion about the land, and I want you to understand what we're gonna ask you at the end really quickly. So, this has 6 questions, really only 4 of them have to be answered. The first question is, which plot of land is your top choice, 1, 2, or 3, or I don't like any of them, which is a perfectly acceptable answer. I hope that's not it, but acceptable. So we're gonna want you to tell us which plot of land you like best, or if you don't like any of them. And then, would you favor a November election or a May 2020 election? And we're gonna talk about kind of pros and cons to each of those, and I have some numbers for you as well. Or do you not support the election at all? Again, acceptable answer. And then, if a bond were passed, whether or not you support it. So this question is kind of crucial for us, because here's the thing. If a bond is passed, it only has to be passed by a 66.66% plus 1 majority. I'm not saying that's fair for the other 40% or 30+% who might vote it down. However, the fact remains that if a bond were to be passed, everyone would have to pay taxes on it. So I want everyone's feedback on this question, whether or not you support bond. If you're gonna go and vote no, that's fine. We would still like to hear which year, which term, and which price you're looking at. Yes, ma'am.
If you have information on the economic impact of not having a good library, I think that that is something that's really, really important for people to understand, because they get all bent out of shape about taxes, and those people frankly need to, maybe go live in a hole and never drive on a road, or expect the cops to come when they need something. Just irks me so much. And to me, the economic cost of illiteracy far outweighs, and.
So, in addition to literacy, there's a book called Palaces for the People by Eric Kleinberg, if anyone is so inclined to read it. And it talks about creating community spaces. This guy researched, and he looked at the heat wave that hit Chicago, heat wave in the 90s, and how he noticed that in separate neighborhoods, like in one neighborhood, hundreds of people were dying. And in another neighborhood, dozens of people were dying. But these 2 neighborhoods, if you looked at them, the age ranges were about the same, the economic standing was about the same, the household income was about the same, and this was very curious to him. And so he started by researching that event, and he found, what they found over a long period of time, is that community spaces, free public community spaces, parks, libraries, other civic centers, rec centers that are available to people, community spaces create a healthier, happier community, a healthier, happier economy, and they keep people alive. They noticed that in the neighborhood where 1 person per several hundred was dying, that neighborhood had people going out to the senior center. That neighborhood had people going to the library, taking their kids to the community pool. They had these community centers where people could gather, and therefore people were checking on their neighbors. They were noticing that if someone didn't come play checkers at the community center, they wanted to check on them, and they were checking to make sure these people were okay. In the other neighborhood where there were many more fatalities, they were noticing that this place did not have community centers of engagement. They didn't have things like libraries, parks, swimming pools, rec centers, senior centers, things like that. And that more people were just dying silently in their homes. They continued on this research, and they looked at big cities. They looked at neighborhoods and I can't quote all the big cities for you, but it is in that book. They looked at cities where they had one city and they were having a huge crime rate. They had a very high crime rate. And they were concerned about this, and they noticed that in that area where they had a really high crime rate, there were a lot of abandoned buildings, a lot of empty lots that were full of trash. There were a lot of sketchy places. So as a city, they took the initiative, they went through, they cleaned these up, they made parks, they repurposed the old buildings, things like that, and the crime rate plummeted. Because again, when you keep people engaged, you get an educated community, an economically stable community, things like that. And that is one of the big things that I will spout all day about libraries, is even if you don't use it, a good portion of your community is and benefiting from it. Yes, sir.
Businesses will
Are
be
you
down.
open to any other, land places?
Yes. So, we've talked to everything we can find. If you have something hidden up your sleeve that you know about, I'm listening. I can tell you if we've looked at it, the price on it, why it does or why it doesn't work. If you know all the people surrounding us and they all wanna sell us their backyards, we might be able to work something out. But yes, we are still open to other land. So, I'm gonna ask you about if a bond were passed, whether or not you'd support it. I have different terms here. When we went for the first bond, the board decided on a 15-year term. The reason they did that is because when we looked at it, we said, we wanna make, it was higher cost per year per 100,000 of homeowners value after the exemption. However, it saved millions in interest. And so we looked at it and we said, we want our taxpayers to be done paying this faster, and we want them to pay less than if we did a 20-year bond. The feedback we got from people is that a lot of people don't care. A lot of people want a lower yearly payment, they don't care how long they're paying it, because in their mind, once they start paying it, they're never gonna stop paying it, there will always be taxes. So we have on here a 15, 20, 25-year, and 30-year term bond, and what that would cost per year. I will remind you, and it has it in bold on here, because this is a confusing point for everyone. This yearly payment is per year, so if it's $57.71 per year, that is per year per $100,000 of property value, taxable property value after the exemption. So if you have a home that is $100,000 of property value and you get the exemption on that, you're only paying on $50,000 of that property value. That means you would be paying half the amount listed here, so roughly $28, okay? If you have a home that's $200,000 and you have that homeowner's exemption, then you would pay on $100,000 of property value, which means you pay the amount here. Now this amount is not set in stone forever and ever. The other thing you need to understand is as more people move in, the best way to explain it is if we took out a loan for $100 or for $200 and we had 100 people paying that loan, everyone would pay $2, right? $2 per year. If we had 100 more people move in and we now have 200 people paying taxes for that loan, everyone pays $1, right? Now, I'm not a financial advisor, it wouldn't work out exactly that easy. But the point is that more people move in, we get more property value, we get more property owners splitting that tax. The rate everyone is paying per year dips little by little, so it will fluctuate year to year. So I'm not promising you that whatever it is when you vote on it, it's gonna stay that exact cents every year. It will stay close. And then do you have any further questions you would like addressed, and or would you like to set up a meeting with me? Sometimes people don't wanna ask questions in a public meeting, or you get home and you have questions. You can circle yes or no. If you want to meet with me or talk with me, you can provide your name, phone number, and a best time to call, or you can provide an email if you'd rather me email you, and then any other comments. We can't answer your questions if you don't ask your questions. So if you want to set up a meeting with me, I will sit down with you, I will answer all your questions, I will listen to all of your opinions, and then you can make sure you are getting those questions answered. Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any other architects render designs, or did you consult any others? Or just
We bid out
Lawrence?
3 different architecture firms.
Were they all in town or in this area?
No, 2 were in town and one was, it's been a long time. One was not as local. They served around us, but 2 were in town, and 1 was out of town. But we bid out 3 architects. We looked at their experience, we looked at their fees, we looked at, their business plan for how they would go about creating a library design for us, what they would look at, what they would do, what they would ask us, how they would work with the staff, things like that. Even so far as after bond work, how they manage the construction manager, and work with them, how they keep us updated, things like that. So we did. So, let's talk about the land, and then we'll move on to talking about the November or May bond. Any comments or questions on the land? Yes, sir.
So, you were talking about the parking,
Mm-hmm.
and so, site 3 is 41,495,
Yes.
but there's additional land there that you could purchase if you wanted to expand the park. or not.
Yes. So, if we wanted to expand parking in green space, we could purchase more land.
Potentially, or did he say that, the guy who owns it?
He said we could have what we wanted, and additionally, we said 2 acres, and then I asked for 2.5, and he came back and said 2.5, and just gave us a price per acre.
Okay.
Our other one was going to be 2 acres. Now, you also have to understand, if this were our pie in the sky, I'd be like, give me a 5-acre lot with a huge library and tons of green space and a playground for kids and a pavilion and, you know, outside amphitheater. We would have lots of stuff. When we've gone through this process, we didn't do that. We initially started and said, okay, if we could have everything, what would we have? And then we scaled it way, 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 way back. We even went so far as to get rid of all of, like, when we went down to 1 story, we got rid of nearly, it was like 9,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet of space, just by getting rid of extra mechanical closets, stairways, things like that, because we were looking at our price per square foot to actually build that building. So we have done all this trying to make this as cost effective and yet useful for the taxpayers. I don't wanna have to come back to the well in 10 years. When we first looked at this, the chair of my board at the time said, go find me a solution for the next 3 decades, at least. And that's what we've been trying to do. We're looking at the growth, how far Chubbuck could possibly grow unless they annex a large piece of land, which can't even predict, how far they could go, and so kind of what we're looking at serving in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Other comments or questions on the land?
Well, you're aware of what the proposed building, on the east end of the site,
Yes.
cause there's
Yeah.
a couple of developments this side of the freeway and it
Mhm.
usually works on
Yeah, so huge population growth. Plus out here, out west, they're building hundreds of homes every year. They've bought a ton of that land, a bunch of the farmland, and they've got it, bought it out and they're developing more and more every year. So we're getting growth on both ends. And then additionally, the more people go up Buckskin and Parks in the county, that's all us. The more people build out in Maple Creek, that's also all us. Grants is another thing that always comes up, so I'll address that really quickly. We can get grants for usually small things. The largest grant I've ever gotten was $10,000, and it was specifically to buy a laser cutter and engraver and laptops, to provide a computer-aided design camp for 5th through 9th graders, which we did. And we still do projects with that, but grants are very specific in our arena. It depends on kind of which area of the civic engagement or nonprofit you work with. We are looking at grants for doing things like a book bus that we could take out places, so we could get out to Moon Creek and out to Fort Hall, for maybe some satellite locations at different places, so that's always an option. Unless there's a grant I haven't found, which is completely possible, that would give me millions upon millions of dollars, and we could by some miracle get that grant. Grant funding is really not an option to fund this library. It's an option to fund the furniture inside the library. It's an option to fund books for the library. Option to fund things for a lockable makerspace. It's not an option to fund a building.
Yeah, there's not a billionaire Andrew Carnegie anymore.
And there are hundreds of libraries that would go for that grant. We're all facing a space problem, so. Any other questions or comments on the land? Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a couple questions. And I can't remember if we addressed this in the last meeting. For the location 1,
Mhm.
is there a possibility to put a fence along that road at the front? Not that there's green space there. And my second question is, that I can't remember if we answered before, is there a plan available of what the city of Chubbuck, which I know is completely separate from the library, has for that area, so we can see what it would look like?
They have posted plans on their Facebook page.
Okay.
I think you could probably also call and request general plans. They've made them public.
Do we know the timeline of that at all, like how many years it's gonna be before is that stuff public?
From what I have been told, they will plan on breaking ground in the next year.
Okay.
moving dirt. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not
No, I
on
know
that,
it's
but you
totally
could call and
different.
ask.
I
I
was
mean, I
just
could tell you who to
curious.
ask.
Yeah.
But as far as the fence goes, I have no clue. I know that we would have problems with like setback and visibility. We
Yeah.
may be able to put a chain link fence there on the corner. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the green space is at the back, so it's
Yeah.
not like kids
So
would be
you're talking
playing.
about like right there.
Yeah, just for people, cause I think seeing this page is actually one of the most helpful, because when you see the bird's eye view, it's like really the locations, they're all kind of close to each other anyway. Like, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like, you have to kind of focus on the why of what we're doing here. So, but I was thinking if people really are concerned with kids and things like that, maybe you could put a fence along that road or something.
Yeah, I have not, that's not even something I've asked, so that is something I could ask, if we could do that. I'm sure there would be city permits
Where's the parking for that initial location?
So you can see it up on here, there's parallel parking all the way down, there's a small parking lot right in here, and then there's also parallel parking all
Yeah.
out to Chubbuck Road.
But there is no parking on like
No,
Chubbuck, okay.
so it has it on there, because eventually Chubbuck plans to make that more of like a walkable main street. So potentially in the future there could be something there, but not currently,
Okay.
just being realistic.
Over here.
Our architect might tell you that, yeah, we're gonna do that, but being realistic, yeah, sorry.
And what happens to the sale of this building whenever?
So
does
our
that
board of
go towards the
trustees-
new building, or how does that work?
Okay. Our board of trustees has
Is that a
power
bad
to
question?
sell, no, you're fine, it
Okay.
just has a couple parts, so just stay with me. Our board of trustees has full power to sell or lease this land, or keep
Okay.
it, and, which they aren't likely to do, not that I'm saying for sure, but they aren't likely to do. With that, any funds from leasing it come to the library for use. We
Okay.
likely won't lease it. Any funds from buying it, so if the sale of this building, all of those funds come to the library, besides what we would pay for like realtor fees or any fix-ups or things like that.
So does that affect like taxes and like what people will be paying at all, like once this building is sold,
So
or?
the problem is, we can pay it toward the bond on the back end. It's not gonna affect the yearly, the way I understand it. Again, not a bond attorney,
Yeah.
not a municipal advisor, I've asked lots of questions. The way I understand it, it's really hard to bring it lower, the taxes lower yearly. We may be able to pay it off like a year early by
Right.
doing that.
Okay, yeah.
But yes, those funds would come to the library.
They do go to the library.
Yes, so they could go in our savings, they could go in our operations budget, they could go, if we could pay, so our last bond, we actually did pay off faster than the term that we had set when it was passed. From that, every year we paid a little bit extra toward that bond,
Okay.
so every year taxpayers were paying, you know, the same promised amount or whatever, percent, I guess. But we were paying little bits extra payments, and so we paid it off faster than it was supposed to be paid off, so yes, but it's complicated.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Alright.
Thanks.
I do wanna talk about the difference between a May and November bond. Does anyone have any land questions before I go on? Okay,
Better turnout in November, wouldn't you?
well, I mean theoretically. So the reason we did a May bond was not to be secretive, first of all. I had someone call and accuse me, they called me a conniving politician who was set out for my own greed. And that's why I did a secret May election. I promise I'm not a conniving politician. I literally have no aspirations beyond being the director of a very small public library, district library. I've lived here my whole life and I'm not going anywhere, guys. But so the reason we did a May election is because we were on track to do a May election. We had originally talked about doing November 2018, and we just didn't get ducks in a row. I will say, I feel like we might have approached that a little bit differently. In hindsight, we could have done it a little differently, but we're all figuring this out as we go. Only one of our board members was here. I was a child at the time of the last renovation, or the last build on in 2004. There you go. Only one of our board members was present around that time, and so a lot of us are just, I'm asking lots of questions and figuring this out as we go, and getting people on our team to help us with this. So we didn't get things in line for November election. We did a May election because we were on track for it. We had everything done. We were really trying to stay ahead of the growth. There's so much growth coming, and we really don't want to be behind it the whole way. We're already to the point where we have people coming in and saying, I love your music and movement. I can't come anymore. It's too full. You know, my kid can't handle that there are 80 other children and their parents in this room right now. True story. Now, is every story time like that? No. Some of our Wednesday afternoon story times have 20 kids. Don't come to Wednesday
That's the
story
one to
time.
come to.
But we're already having that problem. So we were trying to stay ahead of the curve and support the community. People thought it was secretive. So that's a big thing for going for the November election. People did not realize there was 2 general elections, a May and a November, and they happen. It's not a special election like a school district. And so we went in May. We could go in November. my biggest concern is I don't want taxpayers to feel like we're coming for them. I know that the fire district just happened, and so I feel like people are still dealing with and chewing with that and trying to figure that out.
Did
So-
that pass?
It would give us, yes,
Did
it passed.
pass?
Which was good, because people were going to be without home insurance. It was important. If I said last meeting, if I'm honest, if I have to choose between a bigger library and a fire department, I'm gonna choose a fire department, because that's a basic need. And library is just barely below that on the basic needs in my book, but that passed. So a November election would hit them right after that. But there are more people, better turnout, more visibility, people are paying better attention to the polls. If we waited until a May election, we run the risk of people thinking again that we're being secretive. We run the risk of people not wanting, or not having us in their minds, and so then one of two things happens. We start back at square one, where we're trying to communicate and tell people, get people to ask questions and let them know what's going on. Or people don't see it in November and they think, oh, the library's just making that up, they don't need it. If we wait till a May election, the pro is that it gives us a little bit more time to talk to people theoretically and go. But that's really what we're looking at. For us, I would love to have it passed in November so we can get on this, cause it's gonna be like 3 years till we're in that building, 2 to 3 years. So even if it passed in November, we're still not looking at a new library to serve this ever-growing community for another 2 to 3 years. So if we wait till May, that time just goes out. However, as far as which election to go in, the public is really who we want to help us decide that. So on here, we ask Mayor November election. That's what I want you to think about, and I do want your feedback on that. Yes, ma'am?
What I was wondering about is with the November, May.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we've got right now taxes on your home, which most people are, okay. And that we don't know what the levy is going to be, the tax, and you don't know that until right when your stuff comes out. You have the election before then. A lot of people are adding up all this stuff that they don't know what they're adding or how much they're adding or anything else. We've received no information.
Guesstimates, yeah.
Okay, what you gave here, even as a maybe or something, was this information given out in May to the voters?
Yes.
It was, okay, so
Yes.
I had missed that. And all, and I think that something such as this is very important to get out to people and the voters and all. But I also wonder with that November election, I mean, people are still up in the air. And as you said,
Yeah.
the fire district just passed, and that's gonna affect our north people there. And then we're going to have the houses and stuff, taxes go up there, and, I mean, everything is just.
Yeah. Well, and
And so what I'm worried about
the
is,
way Iowa does it isn't great, guys.
is that, you
Yes.
know,
I agree with you. I mean, I'm in the same
and
boat with
maybe
my house,
some
trying to figure out
things
what's coming.
might, you know,
Some of those things you can call, so all of the, like, the cities and the districts and their budgets are done. We had to do our budget and approve it, and I can tell you exactly how much, what rate we're levying off taxes next year. We all had our budget approvals. The, official forms for that are due on September 5th to the county. They okay them, they send them to the state tax commission. So a lot of the places can give you an estimate. But that's a lot of footwork for people to do I mean, I'm not gonna call the districts that are on my taxes and ask them how much, what percentage of my taxable home value they're taking. So it's a big question mark. It's a big question mark.
yeah, and a
Well,
lot
a
of
lot of-
people don't, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying,
Well, and-
do, or even know that, you know, it may have gone up 50%, but when you do your, there's only 25% there, and then the tax levy is more than likely going, well, with some people, they said they've already dropped it lower than what it is. You're gonna be paying some, but it doesn't, I don't think it's gonna be as big, but I don't think that has really come out for most people.
Yeah, most people
understand.
don't know that yet.
Yeah, and they won't
and it
know it
also- yeah.
until,
So I
Right
got a letter from the
before-
county telling me what the estimated, and I get letters from the county through the budgeting process. I just got a letter about the estimated home values for 2019, and those official ones don't come out until like the end of September. So even we who do our budgets, I can tell you the levy rate, I can tell you we're levying 0.00060.
Mhm.
But I can't tell you off of what value or what the total assessed value is, because that hasn't even come out yet. So even if you could make a guesstimate,
And
we have
this-
no idea
yeah, and
how
this
many
stuff
people.
doesn't come out until Thanksgiving, right
Yep.
before Thanksgiving, you get that bill.
Yep.
Unless you're making payments on your house, but even if you're making payments on your home,
You still don't get
still
the
don't
whole
know
picture.
if it's gonna more likely go up.
Mhm.
Those that have their houses paid for, you write the check.
Yeah.
And we don't know that until right at
Well, and a lot of people are on a
Thanksgiving.
fixed income, and we understand that as well, and
They
so.
don't have a mortgage payment, they should be able to afford a little bit more on the
I
library.
mean, that's not necessarily true. I mean, I would love to say that. I love the library, right?
Well, I
I
can
want
say
this
it
new
for
library,
you.
yeah. But fact of the matter is, we have people who are on their retirement and spare fixed income, on social security, on things like this, that, we have pockets around here that are people who are on very, very fixed incomes. And yes, the majority probably could fit it into their budget. I did literally have one person tell me that they did not wanna pay the $80 a year because they wanted to buy their boat instead. I mean, that's their prerogative, it's their money, but a lot of people probably couldn't afford it. There are people I have talked to who
It's an
said, look,
$80 boat.
I can't afford to pay $5.99 for Hoopla a month. I just can't afford that. We're literally down to dollars and cents in our budget. One person came in and said, look, if I had to pay $80 a year, I'd have to get a second job just to be able to afford that at tax time, because we are so tight. And these are people who are supporters. These are people who come into all our programs and who love the library. So fact of the matter is, there are people who are just on super fixed budgets. And I have no answer for that whatsoever. One thing that someone else said to me, and I'll just repeat here, is that in that instance where people don't know what's going on, we look at this bond levy, I can tell you, you're looking at like 16 cents a day, $4.81 a month, up to $7 a month. So these are not gonna be like a school bond that would pass, which is gonna be super high. These are not gonna be some of the bigger city bonds, sewer bonds, things like that. This would be a smaller bond, so it does have, unless you have multi-million-dollar properties in this area, it does have less of an overall impact. But again, lots of people have fixed income that this affects, so.
Well, people they have the 100,000 exemption, and so I've been doing the math in my head in terms of our home. And, you know, if things are that tight, and I've been in that position before, I know. I grew up as a poor kid, and I've had those times, but I'm thinking of, you know, too, if it's so tight that you can't afford $2 a month on, you know, on a library bond, and that's after, you know, your exemption, then, I don't know, I'd have to see the whole budgetary thing to buy that argument for it to really be that valid in my head.
So here's the argument I would make for those people that are on a very, very tight budget, because I do understand that. I myself have kids and medical bills and school bills. I just finished a master's program, so plenty of student loans. So I understand being on a tight budget. In those instances, and a lot of people we've talked to have brought this up, that's when the library becomes of a greater use.
Yeah.
When the free Wi-Fi, free computers to do your job searches on, to do your homework on, when the free books, when the summer reading program with all of the fun parties. So, hey, you can't take your kids to the swimming pool, but come to our water party, we're gonna have tons of stuff. You can't take your kids to the princess dinner, that they do every year in the rotunda at Stevens Performing Arts, which I would love to go to. Bring your kids to our princess party, we're gonna have lots of fun, and we'll give away some free books. So that is when the library becomes of a huge use to people, is when they don't have the income to be able to, I mean, I buy Audible books like there's no tomorrow, right? I have a subscription, I listen to audiobooks all day, but that didn't happen until like the last year. I was able to do that, and
You know you
before
can
that, I
return
used
those.
library apps.
You know you can return your Audible books.
I did not know that.
I'll show you how.
But before that, and still, I used library apps, free,
Get your
right? The
credit
tax, I mean, you're paying taxes into it, but you might as well utilize it. So that is the argument that has been made to me that I would pass on. I'm not advocating either way, I'm just expressing that that is what we see. We see the people coming in here. Guys, those computers are used every single day for job searches, resumes, homework, checking emails, talking to family, booking flights, for people that don't have internet at home. People come in and use our computers for typing up legal documents. We have notaries, so they don't have to go pay for something to be notarized, we notarize it for them. We have story times. We're gonna start doing outreach things like a story time at the mall every Friday. We're incorporating computer classes, we have been for years, incorporating computer classes into our program to teach old and young how to use computers so they're prepared for not only the workforce, but for school and for homework. I mean, now homework is almost all online for college, right? Everything is submitted online. You don't turn anything
High
in
school
class
too.
anymore. And the schools are going that way, where a lot of stuff is done over Google Drive or in Moodle, Blackboard, Canvas, whatever your school uses. And so we're seeing this shift, and we are trying to prepare people for it. And libraries, guys, we analyze these trends. There are literal people that work for the American Library Association that their sole job is to sit in an office all day long and analyze trends so that we can be on the forefront of it, so that we can be one step ahead. So that in 2014, when I started computer classes, and high school wasn't completely online yet, we were hearing that, hey, this is coming down the pipeline, guys, bigger cities are starting to do this, and we can respond and we can say, okay, we need to start prepping people to be able to do these things online, or use a computer this way, or learn CAD design, or learn about STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, math. We do STEAM as our
Yeah,
group.
so don't forget the A.
There's a lot of things. Now there's STREAM and but we're trying to incorporate these things into our program. It's fun. It really is fun, guys. I love my job. Before I did this, before I was director, I was a programmer. Best time of my life. But it's not just for the fun. These things are teaching hard skills that people need and soft skills that people need for the workforce. We're giving kids a taste that wouldn't otherwise have it. We are in a low income area for a lot of our service area. We are giving kids the opportunity to work with a laser cutter and CAD design. We have kids who come in and do coding and they're like, I'm so excited, and then they sit down and they do it and they hate it. But we also have kids, when I did my first coding class, I was like, oh, eye roll, do I really have to do this? I mean, I was an adult, I was working here. And I sat down and I loved it. And so we give kids that experience where we say, hey, come try out an engineering project. Hey, come do some math puzzles. Hey, come do this. And I am a huge advocate for education, right? Mom's a teacher at Highland, actually. I was a straight A student. I got degrees. I'm considering going back for another degree just for fun because I'm like that. And so I'm a huge advocate for education. When I first started this job and people would say things about out of school education and how important it was, I would kind of get like my hackles up and be like, but wait, there's schools and schools are important and they're getting what they need at school. Fact of the matter is, we can learn differently in an environment at a library when we're incorporating literature into it, when we don't have a set of standards we have to keep to, and so we can say, hey, we're gonna talk about Rosie Revere Engineer the book, and we're gonna do an engineering project, and we're gonna do some art with that, and we're gonna talk about the math involved. And it's fun. We did one a couple years ago where we told them to build a princess in a tower and how that princess would get down. And we had like 20 groups and every single group was different. And they could explain their idea and how it was gonna work and how the princess was gonna climb down and how it would hold her weight or how this would swing this way, because it's fun. And so not only do we do the books and the literacy, we don't do the programs just for fun, we're teaching skills and we're getting these opportunities in this basic education in another way to create a more well-rounded community. And so it is something that's useful for everyone, but is especially useful, sorry, soapbox guys, I'll get off my soapbox, is especially useful for those in lower income areas. Any other questions? I get a runaway mouth when I get excited.
No, we
That's
just need to
okay.
do that.
Yes. Does anyone have any other questions before you do that? Okay, if you have questions, I'll be here for a few minutes after. You can always